In this guide to issue 2 of Warhammer 40,000 Conquest, I'm going to show you how to build your models, paint them, learn how to play some of the rules, plus a little look inside. Inside this issue, you get to explore who the Death Guard are. Now, they are one of the traitor legions who have fallen to the chaos god Nurgle, the god of pestilence and disease. You get to read up on the demon primarch Mortarion and who he is. You get to explore the Plague Planet, which is a demon world infested by the powers of the warp. You can read up on the Plague Fleets and how they are formed. And finally, the bulwark of the armies, the Plague Marines. So what do you get included with this issue? Well, inside you'll find there's a pot of paint called Death Guard Green, which you'll use as the basis of painting your Plague Marines. You'll find some dice to learn how to play the rules, and also a sprue with 3 Plague Marines. You'll also find included in this issue a double-sided playmat, and along the side you'll find 2 range finders and 2 objective markers, which you will need to cut out. So let's get building. You'll need your sprue, your clippers and your mold line remover. No glue is needed still. So as always, have a good look at the sprue and the instructions within issue 2. You then want to start putting them together, starting with the first Plague Marine and go through pieces 1 to 5. We can speed this up. You will notice that I clip out an additional backpack. This is just to demonstrate a little trick to neatening up those tricky areas. So once you've clipped the pieces out, you then use your mold line remover to scrape away those excessive bits of plastic and mold lines. Making sure to be careful you don't get rid of any of the details on the models. Now here's a pro tip. If you do find any tricky bits where you are afraid to damage delicate areas like on this backpack where the spikes are, use the clippers just to neaten down and shave away that extra bit of sprue before you get the mold line remover to it. And as you notice, it comes out nice and smooth. So let's get painting. Here's a list of things you'll need. So to start off, we're going to paint the entire models in Death Guard Green. Make sure you give it a real good shake, have fresh water beside you, and make sure you keep the point on your brush at all times. You do want to apply this nice and evenly, so just a touch of water just to thin out the paint slightly, and don't be afraid to do multiple layers if needed. Remember, don't let that paint go more than halfway up your brush. And that's it. Get painting. You'll notice that I have disassembled the models. This is because this stage is a little more tricky to get to the details you need to fill in with Abaddon Black. So as always, make sure you got a nice point on your brush. Apply the paint onto the palette first. Give that paint pot a good shake before you do. And that's it, get cracking. Just add a touch of water, and you will need to do a couple of thin, even line coats just to make sure that you blot out any of the green showing from underneath. So areas like the chainmail, which You might need to water the paint down just a little bit extra, just so it actually sinks into the little holes on the chainmail. Then you want to paint all the weapons, like the plasma gun on the back, the knives, and the bolt guns as well. And if you find any tubing or pipes, you can paint those too, so they look like this. The next stage is to paint Retributor Gold. So this will be on the shoulder guard trims, and remember, again, apply it in even coats. You might have to do a couple of coats, and don't worry if you make a mess with this or the previous stages, because at the end you can always go back with Death Guard green and neaten up. You also do the details and the exhaust pipes on the backpacks and the trinkets hanging around, and the little glyphs and details on the armor too. And it should look something like this. Then once you've neatened them up, they should look like this. So now that you have two fighting forces painted up and ready to go, we can now learn how to play Warhammer 40,000. Now in this issue we cover movement, that's moving and advancing, and also shooting, so how to hit, how to wound, and how to do your armor saves. So get your mat out, cut out the rangefinders, get your dice ready, and set up those models in the marked out spaces. Now the Ultramarines are defending their ship, so they get to go first. The Intercessors move quite fast, so they get to move 6 inches. Remember, when you're measuring, you measure from the front of the base, like so. You don't have to move the full 6 inches, it's totally up to you. You can move anywhere between 1 and 6 inches, or not at all. But you cannot move through these objects, so remember that. You can then have an option to advance your troops. You do this simply by rolling a dice, and that's how many inches you move that model. It is important to remember though that advanced models cannot shoot that turn. So for demonstration purposes, I'm going to roll this out for all 3 models. As the Ultramarines have already advanced, they cannot shoot in their shooting phase. So we move on to the Death Guard's movement phase. So the Death Guard are very tough, but they're very slow and cumbersome because they're full of disease and pestilence. So to represent this, they only move 5 inches. Remember, you do not have to move the entire movement range. For the Death Guard's turn, I will not be advancing them as I want to get into exploring the rules on shooting. Now, the most important part about shooting is having line of sight. You need to make sure that you don't have any objects or terrain blocking the field of vision, and making sure you have a line of sight between your model and the other model. To do this, use a rangefinder to draw that line. Once you are satisfied that your model can see the opponent, you then check the stats within issue 2. You'll notice that the Plague Marine has a ballistic skill of 3+. This means you need to roll a 3, 4, 5 or 6 in order to make a hit against the Intercessors. If you make that successful hit, you then roll a 4, 5 or 6 to wound him. Now if you're successful in wounding him, the Intercessor player gets to make an armor save. To To do that, they pick up dice and roll 3, 4, 5 or 6. If they fail to make that save, they take a wound. Now intercessors are quite tough, tougher than normal Space Marines, so they get 2 wounds. So if you only take 1 wound away from the intercessor, just put a dice next to them so you know that they only have 1 left. Now that we've done with the Death Guard shooting, let's hop over to the Ultramarines. Now let's just assume that they've done their movement and they haven't advanced at all. Let's get to their shooting phase. Now the Ultramarines are highly trained too, especially the intercessors. So in order to shoot at the Death Guard, they will also need to roll a 3, 4, 5 or 6, as their ballistic skill is 3+. If they make a successful hit, they will need to roll a 5 or a 6 in order to wound a Plague Marine. This is because Plague Marines are typically tough. If that's a successful wounding, the Plague Marines get to make a 3+ save. So that's 3, 4, 5 or 6 in order to save that wound. Again, as they are very tough and they are blessed by the Chaos God Nurgle, they have a special rule called Disgustingly Resilient. So they get to roll a further 5 or 6 if they failed that save. If you fail that, you remove the model from play as they only have 1 wound each. Once you've played through that scenario, to make things a little more interesting, you have more rules to play. For example, you can use an objective. They have also included additional rules for each of the variant weapons, like the Blight Launcher, the Plasma Gun, and also how to rapid fire. And there you have it, your first battles in the universe of Warhammer 40,000.